Today is July 27th, 2018. My name is Chris Reedy. With me today is Nathan Scott, and we're interviewing today for the 2018 Ford Oval of Honor. Nathan, can you tell me where and when you were born?
I was born in Muncie, Indiana, November 28, 1986.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about what motivated you to join the Army and when you joined the Army.
Do I need to correct you when I say I was in the Marine Corps?
Oh, the Marine Corps. I'm sorry. Absolutely. Tell me when you joined the service and what your branch of service was.
I joined the Marine Corps right out of high school in 2005. I graduated in May, and I went to boot camp in June.
What motivated you?
You know, I've been asked that so many times since I've been. I remember talking about it in high school, telling my parents I was going to join the Marines. And it's just always been on my mind that I was going to do that. And it wasn't until when I turned 17 and I dragged them to the recruiting office that they believed me, and I signed up when I was 17. I can't really ever pinpoint a reason why I joined. I always preferred it to be me than the next guy. But everybody wants to do what they want to do. I want to serve my country. I love living here. Just do what I could.
Your MOS, you'd signed up for infantry. Not many specifically aimed for the infantry. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, when I was younger, all I thought the Marine Corps was infantry. I had no idea they did anything else until I got there. And I signed up open contract for infantry. I didn't even know their infantry was in so many different departments. I actually was a 0351, which was an infantry base, but I was trained in explosives, demolition, breaching, stuff like that. Got to play with rockets and blow stuff up, so I feel like I picked the right job.
What was training like?
Boot camp was something you'll never forget. It was something I don't want to do again, but it wasn't as terrible as most people thought it was. The thing that amazed me the most was there was something to do every minute of the day for the 3 months you're there. It was pretty intense at times, but when you think about it, they're breaking you down, turning you into something new to build you for what the country needed. So it was most definitely hardship, but at the same time, it was what it needed to be.
What were your thoughts and how were you feeling when you knew you were going to be deployed to overseas to Iraq?
Expected. I figured I would be going to Iraq before I even got to boot camp, which it's not so much what I signed up to do was to go to Iraq, but that's where we were and what was going on at the time. So it was not a hard feeling for me to take because I knew it was coming.
Talk to me about getting to your unit in Iraq and how you were received and what the feeling was like at that point.
Well, when I found out I was getting stationed in 29 Palms, California, I've never heard anything great about being out there in the middle of the desert. And I would like to say, the senior Marines laid out a welcome map for you when you get there, but they don't. They want to break you down just as much as boot camp does because they want you to be what they want you to be and what they need you to be because that's not their first rodeo. So it was a little nerve-wracking taking that bus ride over there once you get to the fleet because that's a different experience than having a senior Marine with you 24/7 training you to a senior Marine who is not just a senior Marine to you, but he's your brother next to you when you're over there. And so they don't take it lightly for the new guys. It was pretty crazy. The Marine Corps is pretty crazy.
As crazy as it was that, I guess, also reassuring that they were serious about what you were about to do?
I feel like they were pretty serious about what we were going to do. It was training. I mean, that's what we did day in and day out, was train to do that job for when we were there because that's what was most important. They took that not lightly, so it was pretty serious.
The men who trained you out in California, were they veterans of Iraq already?
Yes, that's the battalion I was in was 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines, and then in that I was in India Company, and every person in India Company is just a senior veteran. There were not so much someone there to train you to get ready. They're there who's been there and going with you the next time. They're senior Marines, as in they've deployed before, stuff like that.
So is that peace of mind for you that you weren't going to be going over with a green unit?
I never really thought about it, honestly, but there was a couple hard chargers there that I was glad to have. Not there, like I said, they were there before 2001 and they were still there, and so it's nice to have someone with experience like that who's been there and can tell you and show you more than, you know, someone who's all going together for the first time. The invasion would be rough because it's everybody's first time. It's hard to wrap your mind around the Marines and the servicemen who did that.
Tell us when you got to Iraq, what year when you got to Iraq, and what the situation was when you got there.
When I got to Iraq the first time was 2006. It had to be the beginning of September. The area we were at was Al Qaim, and it was a little hit and miss. There was most definitely some insurgency still in the area. It was still war time. What else was it?
Did the mood change among the veterans from California to Iraq?
Most definitely. The mood changed before we even got to Iraq. You get in that mindset on where you're about to go and what you're about to do, and that's what keeps you alive.
What was a daily routine once you got there? And how quickly did you, as a first timer to Iraq, fall into that routine?
Well, it's not. You can't really have too much of a routine. The daily routine over there has to be different daily because they're always watching. And once you start a routine, is the easiest way they can get to you. If you do the same thing every day, the same time, the same place, makes it pretty easy to be complacent. Because they're always watching. We try to all look the same when we're relieving another unit, so they don't know, but they know. They will ask you. They'll talk to you. Some of them spoke pretty good English. Some of them said they went to the States and learned, but they know what's going on, and so we couldn't really have a daily routine. More than likely, though, we always went on about 3 patrols a day. We were a mobile assault platoon, so we drove in our AO a lot further than people walked. So we had a lot more ground to cover. We had a lot more areas we could go to. So it made it easier for us to be different and not the same thing every day.
Were you in, would you say, daily kind of contact with the enemy, sniper fire?
I want to say daily combatants, but I mean, every time you're there, every day, you don't know what's going to happen because you don't know where they are, what they're doing. There wasn't too many days when we were out on patrol that we didn't find an IED in the ground, so they're there constantly.
And your background was demolition, like you said, blow things up. Were you called in to work with the IEDs, or that was bomb disposal?
That was the complete EOD, and we weren't allowed to mess with that stuff like that, disposal. We were more, my job title was more, hey, open this door, hey, cut that tree down, hey, clear that minefield, or, make a IED myself, things like that. Not so much disarming or disposal.
Talk to us a little about the event where you were wounded, if you will.
Well, it was October. Like I said, we got there in September. I was just talking to my father this morning, and he said it was 6 weeks into my first deployment, he got a phone call from him, the hospital. So we were out about 11 o'clock at night, just driving our commanding officer from base to base. He needed security, and that's what we were obligated to do at the time. We were driving down the road. We didn't have our lights on. We had night vision on, so we were wearing our goggles, which you don't see too far and as clearly as you would during the day or a little bit of light. I was in the lead vehicle in the gunner spot, and there was just an IED in the middle of the road on the main road, and had a very long pressure switch. I seen it. I called it out. IED. We weren't going terribly fast, but there wasn't much time for my driver to react. He slammed his the steering wheel to the left. Like I said, the pressure switch was almost half as wide as the road, so we caught that. And most of the IED itself was propellant, so they were told me, and which I believe them, was just a giant fireball engulfed our Humvee. I remember pulling off into the road. My driver was severely hurt, so we were just coming to a standstill from basically wrecking and off the road. The whole Humvee was engulfed in flames. Remember, I jumped out from the top. We were trying to get the driver's door open, and one of the personnel in the back was helping me, and we drug him out to a safe distance, because as our Humvee was in flames, all our rounds and grenades and explosives were blowing, setting off and things like that. They did a pretty good job on assessing the situation, which I'm thankful for, because it's the guys I train with. You know, that's what we were there for. They set up a perimeter and set up a Humvee from where we were off the ground in between our Humvee that was going off. So I took a little bit of injuries. I got burnt, and I took some shrapnel into my legs and stuff like that. I got the $1 million wounds where I got to stay in country and continue my deployment.
How did that, I guess, affect you mentally for the rest of your tour?
It affected me mentally pretty severe, as you would think. An enemy combatant just tried to kill you, which is expected in your job field. But it probably actually helped me the rest of the deployment, because I was, not that I wasn't on alert the first 6 weeks, but I was most definitely more alert the next 8 months. So it's, you never stop thinking about it. It's 12 years, and you close your eyes and you still see it like it was yesterday. It doesn't go away. But for the rest of that deployment, it helped probably keep me alive, because it wasn't the last one we seen.
You recovered in country. Your wounds weren't as severe. The other occupants of the vehicle, you said, flew back to Germany. Did you want to stay in country, and if so, why?
After I got hurt, and they offered me a position where I wasn't in the lead vehicle, wasn't doing what I was doing, a little more safer, just standing posts, as I would say, a little more boring. I was there to do my job and to be with the guys I trained with, who become your brothers, and I didn't want them to be in a situation where I could help but I couldn't because I wasn't there. So, what was the question?
Just, I guess, why you, or if you were relieved to stay and do your job, which I think you've touched on.
I most definitely was okay with staying and wanted to stay. I didn't want to be anywhere else. I got out of the Marine Corps because of my injuries, and I didn't want to be stuck behind a job. It's what I wanted to do. It's where I was at, whereas I wanted.
Your first tour wound down. You came home, back to the States. Talk to us a little bit about the rehab and the struggle between rehabbing and being tactically proficient.
Once I got home from that first deployment, which was about 9.5 months, it was a complete assessment. I mean, it was different once you've been over and come back and seen the things you see and do the things you did. But
was as you're rehabbing physically,
right.
Was there also a struggle to rehab mentally?
When I got back, they wanted to put me through physical therapy to help with my physical wounds and stuff. But like I said, it wasn't as severe as it could have been. So I did physical therapy as much as I could, but I still had another deployment to do before my contract was over with the Marine Corps. So I still had to be tactical efficient and still train with the people I'm going to go over, because once we got back, we got a bunch of brand new Marines who needed trained, needed to know what's going on. So most definitely my command helped me decide on what was more important and helped change the future. And I took off time physical therapy. I figured once I got out I could touch that again. But mentally It you never really can fix that one. It's doesn't change too much. It's hard to try to put into words to explain that one, because your mind just works differently. You see things differently. You do things differently. You don't think about things anymore. You go ahead.
Yeah, even when you were back home, and when I told you about that MP, the female MP that we were with, she said that even when she was back here in the States, she would always enter the room and look for trouble spots or have it reach for her hip where her 9mm was. Did you experience any of that, or were you much more relaxed when you got home?
I feel when I got home, your mindset, it's hard to transition into knowing that you're stateside, that you're safe again. After my first deployment, we got a few weeks off, and I came home, and I can't say I remember any of it because of the things I was doing at the time. Alcohol was heavily involved. You're celebrating that you survived. You are celebrating to be with your friends and family again. And I think that kind of helped me get through that first month of being home, honestly, when you don't think about it.
Yeah.
Helps you sleep at night, which I know this will all be edited out.
That's right.
But no, your mindset, I like to sit where I can see the door when I go to a restaurant. My wife knows when we go out to eat what side of the table I'm going to sit on and where I'm going to sit. And the first few times I was driving at night in my civilian car back in Indiana, you see something in the road and you immediately took right back to where you were in Iraq. And it's you have to really just talk to yourself and tell yourself that that's what's going on. If you're not constantly reminding yourself that it's fine, it's easy to get lost in those dark views again.
Your personal life changed also for the better. You said you met your wife, you got married. Talk to us a little bit about that positive change in your life, and then also knowing you had another deployment coming up.
I most definitely didn't plan on getting married the entire time I was in the Marine Corps. I joined the Marine Corps, and I expected to die in the Marine Corps. That's what I wanted to do. I was going to live it, I was going to love it, and I was going to do it the rest of my life. But after I did my first deployment and got hurt, and I knew I couldn't continue being the hard Marine I wanted to be, I knew I was going to get out. And when I came home on leave one time, I went to a movie, seen a girl from high school. We started talking. 6 months later, we were married. I mean, we were engaged for about 12 days. We got married before I went back, and then I did my second deployment. But we've known each other our whole lives. We used to ride the school bus together. She wasn't new to me. The whole experience of being with someone was new to me. I didn't want to be with anybody because I knew I was going to be on another deployment, but love is love sometimes. You can't stop that. And I wouldn't want to put anybody through the hardship that they could take on when they're married to somebody who's on deployment. When I talked to my father this morning, and I never really got his out view on after I called him and told him what happened and knew I had 7.5 more months left. He said he couldn't watch the news. He said he gained 35 pounds, and that's never something he troubled to tell me while I was there, and I know why. He wanted me to keep my mindset on what I needed to do so I could come home. But I wouldn't want to ever put anybody through something like that, and I'm so thankful I wasn't married during my first deployment, because I'm sure that would be just nerve-wracking for that spouse to be home, because they may not be there, but in their mind they are there. They are no more or no less a part of it as the person there is. It's got to be rough on them. But that having her in my life has changed me significantly. I didn't have so many. I had a lot of rules in the Marine Corps, but I have a lot more rules in my married life now. She has kept me straight and on the path of righteousness.
Your second, when we talked, and I think it leads into it, your second tour when you went over, you said things had calmed down, which was good. And did that affect the way you acted in this new situation with you're newly married and you're back in Iraq? How did that affect you in your day-to-day kind of dealing with the war?
My second deployment was a lot less nerve-wracking than my first deployment. I was married, so of course I wanted to come home even more so. But my second deployment, we were in hit Iraq, and it was just a lot more stand down. It was, maybe a year later, but we were allowing the Iraqi army and the Iraqi police that we've been training to take over, and we were basically there for support. We would do a lot more overwatches for convoys coming through and things like that. It wasn't nearly as much day-to-day, hey, let's not run over this IED today, or someone's going to shoot us from over there, as much as it was just sitting around if you needed to help out, to go. Not to say that it was any less complacent, because you're still there and the threat is still there. It just wasn't as high, and it could be a little more nerve-wracking knowing that, because you get complacent after a while when nothing happens and you just don't think about it anymore. You get into a routine. It's easy to do. So it was, I don't want to say any harder or any less than the first one. The first one went by a lot faster because we were doing a lot more, and the second one was a lot more sitting around and waiting and not doing it as much. But it was the same atmosphere. I feel everybody was still in that same mindset, like something, though, to keep us from doing what we needed to do. So,
At any point during your second deployment, had you decided to go back to civilian life?
I pretty much knew at my second deployment that I wasn't going to be able to continue what I wanted to do in the Marine Corps from my injuries. So I knew I was going to be getting out, and I think it was a big reason why I did get married before I got to my second deployment. After my second deployment, I only had probably less than a year left before my contract was up, and of that year, I took 3 months of vacation before I got out, and so I knew I was done. They knew I was done.
What do you take when in your personal life now, what do you draw on from your military service that affects how you live your life today?
Well, what I take from the Marine Corps, the time I had, literally just the other day, walking through the grass with my 4-year-old daughter looking for toads, and I could see them. They were everywhere, and I'm sitting here thinking, man, I thank the Marine Corps for helping me be this detailed in my searching ability, because when you're over there, you're just looking for a shiny wire sometimes coming out of the ground, and you just want to notice something that's different that wasn't there the day before. But the Marine Corps has most definitely made me the man who I am today. It's not just a job, it's a lifestyle, and they'll change you and they'll mold you into a better person.
Do you have any regrets about your military service?
The only regret I have is I wish I could have done more. I wish I could have spent more time in. I wish I could have could have seen the IED sooner. I mean, you can't think that way, but you feel that way. My driver is actually a good friend of mine. He lives up in Michigan. I always joked with his mom saying I was probably going to die in Iraq trying to save her son, just because the person he was. He's a different individual, and just how everything went down. We like to joke about it, but he's missing his right arm now. He still gets through life with a smile on his face, but you can't hold yourself accountable for the actions of someone else, because that will eat you away. Like I said, I feel like I do a pretty good job mentally. The VA has diagnosed me with PTSD just from the things I've told them, which I feel like I can handle myself a lot better than others. I think I've heard about more brothers dying after the fact than when we were there. People in jail from snapping and doing things like that. So I feel like mentally wise, I've done better than most. And so you don't ever want to regret the things you've seen and done, because they're life experiences. You don't get that anywhere else. You can't live in regret.
That's true. Let me check with Heather real quick and see if we've got enough for our segments. She'll tell Alex. You're going to like this ceremony. I'm sorry, I blanked earlier that you were in the Marine Corps.
No, it's fine.
Our 92-year-old veteran is a Marine Corps veteran of Peleliu and Okinawa, the battles. And, oh, he was a character.
Oh, I bet.
And sharp as a tack.
She said she is good. She doesn't have too much to add. She
Okay.
said the only thing on the list that you didn't touch on too much was the physical rehab part of it.
Right.
But that was the only thing she had to add.
Mainly because there wasn't too much, because my command wanted me to train and miss rehab. I get a shot in my knee every 6 months from the VA. I'm too young to get anything replaced. And that's just the story of that. It's a whole nother box of worms.
They were wanting you to be the tactically proficient Marine, and you had a few aches and pains, but the command kind of won out. They won that.
Well, of course. I mean, when you look at it in their mind, you're a very needed asset. The experience that you gain there to pass on to the next generation is most definitely what wins wars, to be able to pass that knowledge down, because it's hard to train. It's hard to train for what you don't know. You don't know what's coming. You don't know what's there. You don't know how to react in each situation, which all the training in the world doesn't get you ready for some things. But I've never held that too personal to my heart, because I understood the call. I powered through it. There's not a day that goes by that I don't feel about my knee hurting. When I'm at work standing for 8 hours on concrete, it is what it is, but I'm not going to not work. I got to pay bills. I got a family to take care of. It's what you got to do. You push through what you have to.
One more question. Prior to your second deployment, and you said a new batch of Marines came into your unit, what was the most valuable lesson you were able to give them prior to their first deployment?
The most valuable lesson that was passed down from a senior Marine to a new Marine to the fleet isn't just one single thing. It's letting them know that you've seen, you've done the line, you've walked it, but letting them know that you're going to be there with them. That's what's settling the most, I think. The brotherhood, as much as we're separated in our own civilian lives and our own experiences, it's to know that when it comes down to it, when you're there, that person to your left, whether it be the senior Marine of 8 years who has been just down your throat training and kicking you while you're down, will stand in front of that that explosion to save your life. And that's the only thing that I feel was most important to pass down, to let them know that no matter what, they're there together.
That camaraderie, that bond.
Brotherhood never ends, even when you're out. It's fun to talk to the guys, as everybody's lives has changed so much from when you were in, but it never ends.